Hey, you. Why haven't you subscribed yet? Hit the subscribe button and the bell. Enjoy the video. Chris, always appreciate the time, man. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure, man. All right, so you're going to have, obviously, a lot of Saints fans here very excited. Why do you think Davenport is capable of a TJ Watt-type leap?
Well, first off, I mean, the second season that he had, and you're right, that he's had injuries, and his rookie season was not terrible, but not great, and that kind of pushed him toward that bust label. But in his second season, he was a highly productive pressure creator, that he only had 6 sacks. So you can look at that just elementary statistic and say, you know, that's not super productive. But if you're looking at him compared to TJ Watt's second season, and I wrote this in the article, TJ Watt had about 50 pressures on almost double the amount of snaps as Marcus Davenport. He was creating a pressure around 5% of the time. Marcus Davenport was near 11% last year. So when you're just looking at them in their NFL career progression, first year to second year to third year, all signs are pointing to Marcus Davenport doing what we saw from TJ Watt. He wasn't great as a rookie, but not bad. Turned it on a little bit in his second season, especially down the stretch. And then he had, to a lot of people, a defensive player of the year type season. Now, with Cam Jordan there, it's going to be hard for him to kind of take over as a superstar because Cam Jordan has already established himself as that. But everything that he did last season, and I went back and watched the film, he can win in a variety of ways, and he was just productive last season before that late season injury.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned going back and watching the film. So that one data point from Pro Football Focus is certainly interesting, but how is it anything other than something that's just sort of tangential? Is there anything, explain based on what you see on the field that suggests, okay, Davenport can be that guy this year?
Yeah, I mean, not every single pressure or sack was just him beating a tackle one-on-one. They used him in stunts. Some of them were coverage sacks. It took a little bit longer. And being a draft analyst for CBS Sports 2, I scouted Davenport thoroughly, of course, 2 years ago. He was a top 20 prospect for me, actually my number 20 prospect in that draft class, because I think coming from UTEP, people thought, who is this guy? You know, the competition was terrible. But watching his film in college, you saw someone that wasn't only really big and towering and powerful, but he had an arsenal of pass rushing moves, and he completely dominated the lesser level of competition. Yes, it probably took him some time, or we should have expected it to take at least a year for him to really acclimate. But this is not someone that just won with power or because he was bigger and stronger than everyone in Conference USA. He is and was an advanced pass rusher when he came into the league, and I started to see that last season a lot more than in his rookie year. Inside move, outside move, bull rush. He has a plan of attack when he's rushing the passer.
He is Chris Trapasso, CBS Sports. I'm glad it's like you're reading my notes, man. I was going to ask you what you remember about your draft grade or draft analysis of Davenport was. Based on that, how much of it do you think has carried over to the NFL? Like, do you see similarities in what he did at UTSA and what he's done in 2 years in New Orleans?
Yeah, I said Utah. It was UTSA. My bad about that. But again, a small school that doesn't really send a lot of people to the NFL. I think most of it has carried over. And like I've been saying, I saw someone that looked almost identical in how effective he was with his variety of pass rushing moves. I think as a rookie, he didn't play badly again, but I think Davenport was kind of surprised. Like, hey, I can't just bull rush every tackle back into the quarterback. And maybe these tackles are a little bit quicker, sliding their feet laterally against an inside swim move, stuff like that. But I think he's gotten quicker. He's gotten stronger. He's added weight. So I think he's NFL strong right now, so he can win just with pure power and then counter off that with a variety of moves. So I think learning from Cam Jordan, who has outstanding handwork as well and is a bigger power end, probably has helped him. But in terms of just his strengths and weaknesses, I think at this point, and really what we saw last year, he's very similar to the player he was at UTSA This is a 6'5", 260, 270-pound player that ran really fast at the combine, very explosive, and again, refined with his handwork to dispatch blockers on his way to the quarterback.
I'm glad you brought up playing opposite Cam Jordan. When you're playing opposite an all-pro, a double-digit sack guy, how does that impact Davenport this year?
Yeah, it's huge, and really that's the only part of the comparison to the T.J. Watt prediction that's not similar, because T.J. Watt really has had to do it by himself. He has Bud Dupree next to him, a former first-rounder in Pittsburgh that has never really lived up to the hype. But for Davenport to not have to be this alpha rusher, the number one guy that defenses are game planning for, is huge. And it's not just lining up on the left side or the right side. They both move around a little bit. But I put it in the article that ESPN said that Cam Jordan was double teamed on 24% of his pass rushing snaps last season, and only 7 edge rushers in the entire NFL were double teamed at a higher rate. So that proves that teams are like, all right, we're playing the Saints. We need to game plan and throw an extra blocker at Cam Jordan. And I think that will allow more freedom to move up and down the line, to exploit a right tackle or a left tackle or even inside at a guard for Davenport. And he's just not going to get double teams. He's going to get in a lot more pure one-on-one situations to, again, win in the variety of ways and just show how much he's further advanced and how much stronger he's gotten in year 3.
In your research, Chris, was there anyone else that Davenport might compare favorably to?
You mean when he was a draft prospect, or
either as a draft prospect, really right now in the NFL? I'm trying to think if he doesn't, and I guess the reason for asking the question, if he doesn't maximize or peak the way that Watt has, what else might be an apt comparison for Davenport in year 3?
That's a really good question. I can't think of someone off the top of my head. But what's so interesting about his potential, again, is that he's coming from UTSA, small school, but this is not some undersized overachiever. He's 6'6", 265. I mean, and if you look at his combine performance, which wasn't that long ago, it's not like he's 30 years old, was very close to what Jadeveon Clowney did. And I think because they were on polar ends of the spectrum in terms of how much, touting there was for Clowney being a number 1 recruit and playing in the SEC, and then Davenport at the other end of that, it didn't really get talked about a lot. And I wrote that during the pre-draft process, that Davenport is a Clowney type of freak in terms of his 40-yard dash, his vertical at that big of size. So even if he doesn't have a TJ Watt type season, and I really think he will, you're still getting a very solid run defender that is going to be a nice complementary piece to Cam Jordan.
It's a pretty good comp, man, when you talk about Jadeveon Clowney, especially the fact that a lot of people here are sort of wanting Jadeveon Clowney in free agency. Like, what would your thoughts be on that if the Saints were able to add Clowney, or should they even entertain that when you're thinking about the risk or the possible reward you have with Davenport?
Well, certainly as every day has gone on, Jadeveon Clowney has lost leverage. I mean, at the start of free agency, which was really just at the outset of the coronavirus pandemic, he was asking for close to $20 million a year, and then it kept going down. So if it's around $10 million per season at this point, I think you have to at least consider it. But I don't know if it would necessarily be the best allocation of funds because of Davenport's presence, unless you sign Clowney to a 3 or 4 year deal and expect to pair him with Davenport in the future, because Cam Jordan is getting up there in age. But I'm telling you, I think with Cam Jordan and Marcus Davenport, the Saints have 2 high caliber edge rushers to really lead this pass rush. And they're both good run defenders too. I wrote that in the article. Some of these guys are good pass rushers, but they can only play 30, 40 snaps a game because they're terrible against the run. At his size and with his power, he's a 3-down player. I really think we've seen the progression, and usually when you see that jump in year 2, that's when you see the T.J. Watt type jump in year 3 for a former first-round pick.
It'd be awesome to see for Saints fans, no doubt. There's tons of expectation there. One more for you. Chris Trapasso is our guest, CBS Sports, NFL draft writer. He's got a great piece up right now about Marcus Davenport, essentially projecting him the way T.J. Watt elevated and rose in year 3. one big picture question on the Saints defense. We've kind of this offseason, Chris, had this debate about New Orleans. The sack numbers a year ago were top 3 in the league. But it's one of those things where it looks like the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. How do you feel about New Orleans' pass rush as a whole?
It's a little top-heavy. I think, obviously, with Cam Jordan and even projecting this Marcus Davenport ascension, I think if there's any injuries to those two, I think they might have some problems up front creating pressure, but they're almost inverse for most teams in that we have this thought that if you have a good pass rush, that will really help your secondary. I think the Saints secondary is fantastic, and you'll see more coverage sacks. And I think that was, again, like I said with Davenport, not all of his pressures and sacks were strictly on him. I think with Marcus Williams, with Marshawn Lattimore, with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who I absolutely love coming out of Florida, that can do anything as a slot defender, a linebacker, a safety, the coverage unit helps the pass rush. So even if you don't have Cam Jordan playing at his best, or if he's injured for a game or two, you can get quality production from your pass rush because they're just going to cover so well on the back end.
He is Chris Trapasso. Go read his article. It's up right now. Why Saints Marcus Davenport will have a TJ Watt type edge rusher breakout season in 2020. Music to the ears of many Saints fans. Chris, we appreciate the time as always, man. Thanks for a couple of minutes.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot.
All right, be well. Chris Trapasso. Always enjoy talking draft with Chris, but I saw that. I was like, man, come on. Look, admittedly, I'm one of those guys that's been hyping Marcus Davenport. My feeling every year around the draft is, and there's always this debate about New Orleans, which New Orleans takes a different tack than a lot of teams in the NFL. New Orleans identifies guys at once. It gets aggressive. It trades up to go get them. It's not interested in accumulating picks. It's all about identify the guy you want, go get him. And they did that with Davenport. And the reality is the only way that you're going to get an elite edge rusher in the NFL is if you're drafting in the top half of round 1 or you somehow break the bank for one in free agency in a very odd turn of events, because generally the best edge rushers don't hit free agency. It's not to say it never happens, but more often than not, if you have one, because they're so rare, you pay them and you keep them. So look at Cam Jordan. The Saints are going to make sure Cam Jordan never leaves, but they also took him in round 1. So if you're New Orleans and you're a perennial contender drafting at the back of round 1, you either hope you get lucky with a guy like Jordan or a mid-round guy who explodes, or you get aggressive and you go see a guy that you like there in the top half of round 1 and you get him. And that's what they did with Davenport. And I would much rather put my head on the pillow at night knowing I saw a guy I wanted, I got aggressive, I went and got him. Let's see if it works out. And Davenport has flashed it. I mean, you heard Chris say it. I mean, the data is there, which suggests his impact when he's on the field is that of an elite edge rusher. He's just got to stay on the field. So let's see if he can go out there and play 16 games and be on the field for 50, 60 snaps a game over 16 games. And now we're talking about over 900 snaps in a season. How did Davenport do? And if that projection's right, you could be looking at an all-pro caliber player, which would be awesome to have opposite Cam Jordan, obviously. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.